Hi guys, good to have you in class in some kind of form or fashion, whatever we have to do. Um, we are going to kind of fast forward through the rest of the progressive era because we're really limited on what we can do for classes going forward. And so I've really had to pare down kind of some of the key things that you guys really need to know. Okay, so we're going to fast forward through the progressive era. Remember, we were talking about Roosevelt as a progressive president. After that, you have Taft, who's going to be a progressive president as well. And then you're going to have Roosevelt actually run against Taft and Woodrow Wilson for president after Taft's first term. And Woodrow Wilson is eventually going to win. Uh, Basically, Taft and Roosevelt split the Republican vote, and that opened the way for the Democrat Woodrow Wilson. And in some ways, Wilson is the most progressive president out of all of them. But so now we have kind of the last major progressive president of the progressive era, Woodrow Wilson, and uh, not long after he becomes president, now you have World War One happen, right? And so remember, last year we talked about kind of the causes of World War One at a kind of global scale, global level, and we really pared it down to three major causes, right? So we talked about nationalism, which we talked about that a lot last year, that kind of strong patriotism, this idea of putting your country above all other countries, whether that means you have to do something negative or not, right? So nationalism was an issue, and you had a lot of nations, groups of people that identified as a nation that were stateless, that had no country of their own, and they were pushing to get that. And then you also had imperialism, which we've talked quite a bit about this year. And so remember, guys, that is where you have strong nations um, basically taking over weaker ones, whether that's politically, territorially, or economically. And at this time, you have a lot of European powers, especially competing for territory in Africa. And so that is a big factor in causing a lot of tension in Europe and a lot of rivalry in Europe at that time as well. And then finally, guys, we talked about entangling alliances. So, this idea that I'm Britain, I have an alliance with France. France has a secret alliance with Russia. So now I don't know that France, my ally, has an alliance with Russia, but now I am basically tied with Russia, right? And so you have all these entangling alliances that get everyone pulled in once you do have an event that sparks an issue. And um, that event really is going to come with the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary. And so remember, guys, that's kind of how the war starts. You have kind of this build-up, um, kind of countries getting chesty with each other between Austria-Hungary and their ally Germany versus um, Serbia and Serbia's ally Russia. And then you really have the entangling alliances that come into effect as well. And so that's really how the war starts. You have countries mobilizing against each other. You have the war really kick off with Germany saying, okay, we're going to come in quickly and knock out France. in Britain. And so they try and do that by going through Belgium, and that really stirs up the British and really helps get them involved as well. And so then that's where the fighting really kicks off. Germany thinks, hey, we're going to wipe them out real quick, and then we'll turn and face Russia in the east. That is not the case. The BEF, the British Expeditionary Force, along with the Belgian forces, helped tie down Germany for way longer than they expected in Belgium. And so that allows Russia to mobilize their forces. Germany has to turn back troops to deal with them. They also, the German forces trying to drive towards Paris, they have to, instead of flanking Paris, they have to break off and cut short of Paris. And that really causes a stalemate in the West, especially. Okay, and so that's really what you have, where you have a stalemate going on in the Western Front. You know, armies are fighting for inches sometimes a day. And so that's the situation starting in 1914, going into 1917, when the United States will finally come in and break the deadlock. So that's where we're going to start now. Since this is American history, we're going to kind of focus on the United States' role in all of this. And we tried to stay neutral. Obviously, we were able to do that for roughly 3 years until we're finally drawn into the war in 1917. Okay, and so we're going to talk about today the causes for U.S. entry into World War I. So first off, you have British propaganda. So the British, they cut the transcontinental telegraph line between the United States and Europe. And so we're not really getting any information besides information that the British are feeding us through their diplomats with the United States, many of which are pro-Britain, pro-ally, anti-Germany, anti-neutrality. And so they're pretty happy to pass on a lot of British propaganda. So remember, guys, propaganda is information that tries to sway someone one way or another. It does not have to be factual information, but usually the most helpful propaganda, useful propaganda, has at least some facts to it, because that makes it all the more convincing. Okay, so the British were very happy to pass along stories of German atrocities and pass it off as kind of hard intelligence and facts when it's really propaganda. And this is mostly the information getting to the United States because we don't have that telegraph line in place anymore. And this really turned a lot of Americans against the Germans. So you had stories, for example, guys, of German soldiers in Belgium, killing Belgian nuns, taking their corpses and boiling them down for soap and things like that. Just outright fabrications. And so this really obviously gets people turned against Germany and more pro-British. Big business is also in favor of the Allies. So you have a lot of East Coast American businesses that do a lot of business with the Allies, so obviously they want that to continue, so they're pro-Allies. You also have American banks investing heavily in the Allies as well. So by 1917, when we get into the war, the U.S. had loaned over $2 billion to the Allies, and they only loaned roughly $27 million to the Germans. And so that's a big deal, because American businesses are going, hey, and American banks, if we have the Allies lose, we lose that money probably. We are not going to make our money back. We're not going to get paid back on those loans. And so there was a heavy kind of rooting interest, and businesses and banks in the U.S., a lot of them wanted to assure that the Allies won, even if that meant the United States had to get in and help the Allies beat the Germans. Okay, and then also, guys, you have the Zimmermann telegram. This really put us at odds with Germany, not just with the common everyday American saying, hey, I don't really like the Germans, I'm rooting for the Allies. It really helped kind of sever some of the diplomatic ties between the US and Germany. All right, so this is the Zimmer telegram. So January 1917, guys, you have British intelligence pass along a secret telegram to the US government. And this telegram was sent by a German official named Arthur Zimmermann, and it was sent to Mexico. So you have the German ambassador there, Arthur Zimmermann. He's this member of the German government, sent a telegram urging him to set up a deal basically with Mexico, with the country of Mexico, the government of Mexico. And this deal was essentially a proposal of, hey, Mexico, if the U.S. gets into the war, we want you to attack the United States. We want you to declare war on the U.S. And if you do, when we win the war, we will take territories from America, mostly, obviously, the American Southwest, places like that, and give them back to you, give them back to Mexico. And so when this was given to the United States government, when this was made public, there was this big outcry. Obviously, you're trying to incite America's neighbor to basically go to war with them, to fight us, to attack us. And so this was a big blow to German and American relations during that time as well. But perhaps one of the biggest reasons why we were not able to stay out of World War I, stay neutral, was unrestricted submarine warfare. So you had German U-boats that were being deployed against Britain's navy. Remember, Britain had a big naval advantage. They have this really strong navy. And so they're using these U-boats, what they called Unterseeboot, hence why we get U-boats. They're using them to kind of offset that because now you have this secrecy of being underwater, and so that kind of negates some of the strength of the British man of war ships. Okay, these kind of early front runners to battleships. And so in February, guys, 1915, Germany, they announced, hey, we're going to start sinking any ships that are spotted in British waters, whether that's neutral ships like U.S. ships, passenger ships, non-military ships, any ships that these German U-boats see in British waters, they're going to sink. And so one of the first kind of civilian ships that they sink is the Lusitania. So May 7th, 1915, a German U-boat sunk the passenger ship Lusitania. It killed a lot of people, including 128 Americans. And so obviously that enraged America and got a lot of people to say, hey, we need to go to war with Germany. Then March 1916, a French passenger ship, the Sussex, was also sunk by a German U-boat. And a lot of people said, hey, we need to go to war. Wilson threatened the Germans, hey, you better stop this submarine warfare on civilian shipping, or we are going to go to war with you. So the Germans issued the Sussex Pledge. They vowed to stop sinking merchant ships without warning. And this helped for a while, guys, but then Germany thought, hey, we can win the war if we just sink a few more ships, keep the British from getting supplies. So they started unrestricted U-boat warfare again in February 1917, and they sink about 6 U.S. ships in a short period of time. And so April 4th, 1917, the U.S. Congress votes to declare war on Germany, and now we are at war.